Share again.
Hello, Mavericks. We have a very special guest. A lot of you guys are going to find this lady very familiar. Lizzy Butler from Vine Connections. So happy to have you virtually. I feel so lucky because I get to actually have the conversation with you, but everybody gets to watch the videos. So this is awesome. Lizzy's going to, as you guys know, or in case you don't, Lizzy is the wine director. What is your title for?
All things wine? Yeah, you got it.
All things Vine Connections wine. So we have our amazing South American portfolio as well as a few things domestic. So people, we mostly South American, but we have some beautiful California wines from you guys as well. And Lizzy's going to give us a great little overview going into the second half of the year here.
Awesome. Thank you, Montana. Maverick, Colorado. You guys know how much I love you as a team, and it pains me that I can't be there with you. But I was talking to Heather earlier that every time I think of you guys and working the market, it's just like the Colorado sunny blue sky, and it just makes me it gives me so much joy. So whenever we can meet next will be glorious. But in the meantime, I'm very excited to give you an update of what we've been up to at Vine Connections through these crazy times, where we've seen silver linings of opportunities, and where we can start partnering with accounts and seeing successes. And I'm excited to do an overview of a lot of the core brands we focus on, and especially the SKUs that you're going to be working with into the rest of the year with your different programs and initiatives. So a lot to pack in here, and I will be sharing my screen so you can see lots of beautiful images that we have for you guys. As I said, we're going to start more on the insight side so you guys can be updated of what we've been up to, what we've seen as data insights from the market for consumer trends. I find these fascinating, and they've really reflected where we've seen opportunity with accounts and sales. And then we'll do the wine overview in the second section, and I'll also include a map overview because who doesn't love talking about maps? So that's how we're going to roll today. For those of you who are newer to Maverick or just want to review the pillars of the VC world, this is what we stand for. And I think what's really interesting, especially in really challenging times, these 4 pillars of category leadership, innovation, expertise, and distributor support have really come to the surface even more. I think especially the themes of innovation and leadership have been invaluable tools for us. I think when you're faced with things you never anticipated, the solutions are in innovation. You have to think differently, and you have to think quickly on your feet. And I think where our team has been able to adapt and find new ways to do things that we're used to doing, but in very different platforms, it's been really inspiring. So with all the challenges we've had, I think the way in which we lead in both our categories of sake from Japan, wine from Argentina and Chile, as well as just the way in which we deliver information with our education through graphic materials, really leaning into using digital as your friend versus your foe. And we really want to be there for you guys. Our distributor partners are our hands in the market. And so the more we can fuel you all with what we use every day, the better we all succeed. So that's how we create the foundation of our team at Vine Connections for both sake and wine. In that same theme, I want to remind everyone that vineconnections.com is our website, and on the top right-hand corner, there's a button called Trade Tools. That is where you find all of the resources of what we create, from shelf talkers to infographics to maps to a sales sheet generator that you can create on your own. You can custom design it, really easy to navigate. And as you know, we have an in-house graphic design team, brilliant set of women who are creating all of our beautiful graphics. And as you know, if you think it, we can create it. So please utilize us as a tool if you need anything custom designed for a shelf talker or a case card or a social graphic or a poster, anything you need, we can create that for you. As we know, everything has been much more centralized on social media for advertising, for promotions. So our social channels are on the bottom. and you can connect with us there, and we're going to be happy to see you. So you can also find out more information about what we're up to with our weekly posts. So the next 3 slides, I want to give you 3 sound bites of insights that I have found is very useful and very impactful when talking to buyers during this time of COVID and the challenges we've had this year, but again, also the opportunities. I think we all know that there has not been a lack of consumption of wine for wine consumers in the US, and especially online. And so with the insights we've gotten from both Drizzly and wine.com, we've obviously seen a boom of online wine purchases, whether that's through wine.com or through Drizzly or through the online portal of a certain retailer. This is not only an increase of that entrance for sales, but it's also a behavior consumers are learning that they're not going to change after all of this is over. So 88% of consumers want to keep buying online, quote unquote, after COVID ends. So this is something that we all need to keep learning about and helping accounts evolve to become better equipped to either have an e-commerce site themselves or become a Drizzly account, and also connect their in-store inventory and information with their online inventory and information. We are here to help you with that too. And you have an amazing resource in Montana and your marketing team who have been huge leaders in that. Know that you are very unique in the distributor world to be forward thinking of that, and you will be ahead because of that. I can't emphasize the importance of that enough. So increase of online sales with the consumer world, not going anywhere. The second is from wine.com, and the third bullet is as well. And I love using wine.com as a data resource because it shows consumer behavior without any influence of either someone leading them to somewhere on the shelf or having a direct conversation with them. So this is their pure perception of what they want from a virtual wine shelf. And the first insight is about price point. So in general, the average price point of wine.com pre-COVID was $29 per bottle, and the consumer generally has traded down now. So the average price point is now $22 a bottle. In more times of economic stress, consumers usually trade down in price point in general terms of being more conservative with their money. But this is where our categories of wine from Argentina and Chile always shine. We always say how much these wines over-deliver for quality to price point ratio, but it's even more so when the consumer is really trying to look for those wines that over-deliver. You cannot go wrong with Chile and Argentina when you're reaching for that goal. So it's always important to emphasize that, especially for varietals that people are used to paying more money for, like Pinot Noir or Cabernet Sauvignon or Chardonnay. So that is the second bullet point. And the third is really important because, again, in that theme of wine.com showing pure consumer behavior and desire for wine, Argentina and Chile have had huge growth in the time of COVID for category increase of sales in wine.com. Chile at 272%, Argentina at 371%, and Argentina being the second highest growing category on wine.com behind New Zealand. So whenever you have a conversation with a buyer and they turn to you and say they're tired of Malbec or their palate's fatigued or, there's nothing after Malbec in Argentina, they are losing sales because of that, because consumers still want Malbec and they're reaching for it and they're reaching for the category today. This is live data from right now. So it's a huge opportunity to not only get more placements of Argentine wine, but to make sure their selection is updated and robust. Because again, you don't want to lose opportunity of sales that the consumer is asking for right now. So those are the 3 major insights that we have for the wine in the time of COVID, as it is. These are just a couple of facts of our virtual initiatives. So we've been super busy, as a lot of your suppliers have been, as well as your team, with connecting with our wineries and brewers to gain content that's really useful for both trade and consumer. And also doing a lot of virtual events directly with accounts. So we've focused on a lot of different markets. In the state of Texas, we've sold over 200 cases. I think it's now over 300 just with virtual events only in the past couple of months, which has been wild to see accumulate in that way. We've done live webinars with our winery folks and brewery folks over the past 6 weeks. We've had over 2,000 views with those initiatives. Again, even in just one market, 20 plus virtual events, working with our winery folks. And then the key element here is that with a first virtual event and then accumulating after that, we've had an average of 86% increase in sales. So even with those accounts that are super timid of trying something virtually, we've seen once we do that first event, the consumers are so thirsty for this, no pun intended, for connection and for having this interaction. They're really impressed with how we execute, that it engages them right away for both feedback for the event, but then in sales after that. So know that all of these are driving sales forward, not just great content to create as well. So I wanted to give you 2 examples. One is a case study of an off-premise virtual event that we've done, and one is an example of an on-premise virtual event that we've done. I want these to serve as examples for you to get your mind churning of what in your account world we could do something similar similar to this with them. And also keep in mind that these are just examples and all of this can be adapted to any way of being personalized to a certain account. So this is with a retailer in Kansas City, and the name of the retailer is called The Cellar At. This is an example of an account that has a great consumer loyal following for in-store tastings that obviously couldn't exist during the time of COVID. So what we did is Kevin, the buyer, was really hesitant about kind of taking things virtually, but his consumer population was following a lot on his Facebook page. And Kevin also has taken a trip to Chile, so he's been very immersed in the world of our Chilean portfolio. And the theme of taking a trip and doing a road trip in South America has been the theme that buyers have been reaching for. Because no one can really travel right now, everyone's wanting to fulfill their wanderlust somehow, and doing it virtually through wine tastings has been super popular. So we organized it that way and we positioned it that way. And so we did a Facebook Live where we at Vine Connections control the background software of what shows up on their Facebook page. So the buyer only just needs to call into a Zoom call with me, and we filter it to their Facebook page. And it's a really interactive platform because it's me and the buyer talking, but my coworker Jen on the Vine Connections team is helping with graphics. And so maps are popping up, bottle shots, pictures of vineyards, winemakers. So it's a very, again, stimulating and enjoyable presentation. It's not just 2 people talking on a screen. So we had 4 wines, therefore we tasted through 4 valleys of Chile, and we had 59 live attendees, but it ended up selling 30 cases even just before the event started, because again, people trust Kevin, they know that they love events with him, and it ended up having over 1,000 reaches after we recorded as well. So the light is now shining, and I feel like I'm in like a like I'm in log cabin heaven. So that is our off-premise example. And the second example is on-premise. So
hey, Lizzy, I'm going to pause you for 1 second.
Yeah. Awesome.
All right, here we go.
So our second example being on-premise. This again is a different animal than off-premise, right? Because everything is booming off-premise, and on-premise has had its struggles in many different formations. Where we've found success is restaurants that are still opening, they're doing takeout, their customers are still really engaged, and they are either used to doing wine dinners previously, or they still have a great customer base and they want to add something that's still value add to their customers, not just with takeout. And so this is a restaurant that was not doing anything virtual, we talked them through different themes of either doing a South American adventure or grill master wines, or all these different ideas. And so we started with an adventure through Chile. We created all of the graphics for them for promotion. We also created an online Google document that you can sign up with online through their email newsletter. So again, making a really turnkey platform for people to learn about the event as well as sign up and purchase the wines. We sold out of our first dinner, and I took the time to talk with the chef and the owner pre-event to walk them through what it looks like on Zoom, what the format could be, how they wanted it to look for their consumers. And then we all come on the Zoom, and I have a presentation similar to this that I show on the screen. So again, it's more interactive. It's really immersing you in the imagery of South America, which again, that's what people are craving. And the chefs had so much fun pairing the wine with the food. Everyone was super happy to be home. Even consumer feedback has been, we like this better than doing wine dinners in the restaurant, because we're at home, we're comfortable, we can eat and drink as much as we want, and we turn around and we're on our sofa. So what this has now caused is I'm actually doing the 4th dinner with them tonight. So this, at the end of every dinner, the consumers are asking for when's the next one. So even with your accounts that aren't doing any of this right now, know that there's still an opportunity, and maybe they just need a little more insight into what it looks like. And it's a lot to take on something that's very new, but the way that we support accounts, it's really turnkey and easy for them to be able to try it out for the first time, because we're doing a lot of the legwork, and it ends up being really well received for them and increasing sales and selling out dinners. So those are our 2 examples of types of virtual initiatives that we've been doing. Again, the world is your oyster. We can make anything possible. This is just some examples of some of the graphics that we've made. In particular, with the on-prem world, Pais has been such a fun grape to play with, especially during summer with its chillability. And so that has been really fun for kind of the cooler kid accounts, if you will. But a lot of restaurants are doing kind of take-home grill kits, asado kits, so that we've been doing a lot with. Again, really creative stuff, and the consumers are just kind of eating it up. So lots of fun. I'm just very excited to work with the Maverick crew to see what we can create. With the content side of things, all of our webinars, including Facebook Lives, as well as Zoom webinars, we keep on a page called vineconnections.com/webinars. It's also on our homepage on our website that you can link to. It includes all of the upcoming webinars and Facebook Lives, as well as the recordings of everything we've done before. So that is a great resource for you, but something you can also link to for your accounts if they're wanting to learn about a certain brand, winemaker, sake, etc. And this is just an outline of a few things that we've done and a few things that are upcoming also. So that concludes our insights, as well as what we've been up to with virtual initiatives. And if all of you virtually are ready, we're going to dive into a little bit of a 101 on maps. So I know we all know about wines from Chile and Argentina. I know some of you have physically been to Chile or Argentina, which makes me so happy. But I always say that you never should assume that a buyer or a consumer knows kind of the 101 of wines from South America. Never assume that they really know where Chile and Argentina are in the map of the world. So I always like starting kind of from the 30,000 foot view and then diving deeper and closer to the Appalachian maps of both countries. So what you're seeing here is a map of the southern cone of South America. So the southern portion of the continent of South America. To the east, you have Argentina, which, as you can see, is a much larger area country. And then to the west, you have Chile, which is a very long, narrow country. The natural border between Argentina and Chile are the Andes Mountains. The Andes Mountains are the longest and second highest mountain range in the world, only second highest to the Himalayas. So this is an extremely significant geological formation for all of South America, but especially when you're talking about wines from Chile or Argentina. At the end of the day, the wines from Chile and Argentina are mountain wines, because everything from geology to climate to soil to history to culture all really ties back to that mountain range. And even as you can see, this is a specific map of the regions of Argentina. The majority of these regions are up against the Andes mountain range to the west, save for this kind of newer explore region of the Atlantic area, but that's still very young and very new and very small. So what we're going to focus on today is the area and region of Mendoza. Why is that? One, because the majority of our wine portfolio is from Mendoza, and also over 70% of the wine made from Argentina is from the region of Mendoza. So that's what we're going to focus on today for specific regions. And for Chile, what we're going to dive into is essentially the middle third of the country is where you're going to find the wine regions of Chile. Otherwise, the entire length of Chile is essentially the width of the United States. So that is an incredibly long and then an incredibly narrow country with an average of 120 miles width. A long, skinny toothpick at the end of the earth is what Chile is. But we'll dive into more specifics of the wine regions within that middle third, but just for context, we're talking about this space right here, kind of paralleling where Mendoza is over the mountains. So now we're zooming in even closer. This is that middle third we were just talking about in Chile. Any farther north on this map, you're going to go to the Atacama Desert, which is the driest desert in the world. Can't really grow much of anything there. To the east, you have the Andes Mountains. To the south, you have the lakes and glaciers of Patagonia. And then to the west, you have the Pacific Ocean. So you can kind of think of the wine regions of Chile like an isolated, protected island because of all of those geographic extreme barriers. For context and comparison for the map of Chile and also for scale, the general distance of this map going north to south is about 1,200 miles. And what's really helpful for people is that if I put the states of Oregon, Washington, and California on this map, they would directly overlap the map of Chile for wine regions. So as well as distance, but also for a long, skinny, coastal wine region on the west coast with the Pacific Ocean to the west and mountains to the east, it's a very similar setup to that of California and our west coast of the US. So the map of Chile is like our west coast, but flipped upside down and on steroids, because we're south of the equator now. The further south you go, it's a cooler climate with more rainfall. The farther north, it's more dry and generally hotter temperatures. So that's a really helpful comparison for people to start to understand Chilean wine in general. Our VC portfolio started in 2013, and the premise was to be the first appellation-based portfolio of Chilean wine in the US. That still is true today, and we're still the only portfolio of Chilean wine that is formatted that way. Why is that important? Because otherwise, no one was understanding Chile from a holistic standpoint of a full wine producing country. If anything, portfolios of Chilean wine include 1 to 2 valleys, really limited grape diversity within their portfolio. So you're only seeing such a small amount of wine that this country can produce. Whereas our portfolio spans all the way from the Elqui Valley down now to, we have a winery that is producing in the Osorno Valley. So you can taste through the map of Chile and fully go north to south, tasting all of the different varietals and climates and wine valleys that they have. That is really an aha driving moment for people, and then they start to really want to learn more about Chile. And we work with family wineries on both sides of the Andes, so they really specialize in the specific valley that they're in. So it's a really unique perspective of the country of Chile when you taste Vine Connections Chile, and 9 times out of 10, and I want to say 10 out of 10, that people have never seen this side of Chile before. So a lot of fun kind of different plays you can have on the bag you can put together of Chilean wine from us. And they equally tell a unique story of Chile, but also fit the varietals and price points that our consumers are really looking for from other countries as well. Then we hop over the Andes to Mendoza. So on the Mendoza side, I'm going to zoom in more here. You have two main regions of the bigger region of Mendoza. And so for kind of a step one of understanding more subregions of Argentina, people know Mendoza, and the next step I want people to start to understand is Luján de Cuyo versus the Uco Valley. So these are the two main regions within the area of Mendoza. And the general differences is here is that Luján de Cuyo is mainly the more classic traditional region of Mendoza, and it's also a lower elevation area versus the Uco Valley, which is, as you can see, farther south and west than Luján de Cuyo. As you know from our first visual of the map of Argentina, when you go west in Argentina, you go up in elevation in the Andes Mountains. So the Uco Valley, generally higher elevation than Luján de Cuyo, going up into the Andes. And it's also generally the younger area of winemaking than Luján de Cuyo. There are exceptions of some old vines in the southern part of the Uco Valley, but overall, it's kind of the newer kid on the block that has definitely been more recently explored in starting really in the mid-90s of winemakers understanding what uncharted territories in their backyard of searching more into the Andes elevation for vineyard potential. So that's why you can see a lot of kind of the fingers growing here as you go west into the Uco Valley, because winemakers are still understanding what their limit is really of frontiers for winemaking in the mountains, which also is alludes to a really important point of the theme of elevation in Mendoza. I think it's always funny when California vintners or drinkers talk about mountain fruit in California that maybe goes up to 2,000 feet in elevation. The city of Mendoza, which you can see in the top part of the map here, starts at 2,500 feet. So when you're talking wines of elevation and wines from the mountains, you are the country that wrote the book is Argentina. And that speaks to both Mendoza, but also the northern region of Salta, which is the high elevation desert of Argentina that has vineyards going up to 10,000 feet now and stand as some of the highest vineyards in the world. We do have a Torrontés from Salta in the Arena lineup that we'll talk about in a little bit. But again, majority of us, our portfolio is focusing on Mendoza, and where you're finding high elevation is the Uco Valley. So that is the 101 for both Chile as well as Mendoza. And this image really brings it all together. So I always say if I only have one map to bring out when I'm talking about Chile and Argentina and winemaking across the Andes, I actually bring this one, not the aerial traditional maps. And that's because usually people have never thought about a visual of topography comparing Chile and Argentina and what winemaking really looks like comparing Chile and Argentina. So this is an image as if I cut the Andes Mountains in half like a sub sandwich and turned it on its side. And what you're seeing is the cross section. So a lot of main takeaways you can have from this. One of the more important ones is first seeing you have the coastal influence of the Pacific Ocean in Chile. That moisture and air flow comes off of the ocean, hits the country. There, we'll talk about the coastal mountain range, but that generally goes inland, hits the wall of the Andes, and then you have a rain shadow on this side. So when people talk about Mendoza as a desert, they're absolutely correct, but this shows you why. This is the same climatic phenomena you can see in the Cascade Mountains with an area like Walla Walla being very dry to the eastern side of Washington State. And that's exactly why Mendoza is a dry, arid desert itself. It's also why Mendoza is the land of the sun, and why sun intensity is such an important theme when you're talking about wines from Mendoza, both for its clarity and aridness in the sky and the high luminosity, but you also get higher sun intensity as you go up in elevation. Just like all of us who have to put sunscreen on going up in the mountains, grapes have to too. So that increase in thicker skins to protect the seeds increases tannin development, polyphenol growth, color content, and then you're getting cooler temperatures with higher elevations as well. So that is really why high elevation is such an important theme in Mendoza. The way you get cool climate is you go up. In Chile, you can go up in the mountains, but you can also go south to cooler temperatures, and you can also go to the west to the ocean. So speaking of Chile, we have the valleys that go north to south in the map, but there's also a really important designation going east to west when you're thinking about Appalachians. In 2012, the government officiated these three regions, Costa, Entre Cordilleras, and Andes, which means coast, in between mountain ranges, and Andes. And that's because you can be in one valley that's east-west transverse formation, that has an east-west transverse formation. And in that one valley, you can have a vineyard that's 11 miles inland with coastal fog in the morning and really moderate temperatures, or you can have a vineyard at 7,000 feet in the Andes. Those two vineyard sites are very different, although they're in the same valley. So these three east-west designations were formed to start talking about that difference. It really speaks to more of a matrix of terroir in Chile. You have north-south, but you also have east-west. So that's how I really encourage people to think about Chile as well in that matrix. The other important thing to take away here is that the formation of the Andes Mountains were two tectonic plates coming together, pushing up the Andes in the middle. But the original Andes, if you will, or the original Chile that came out of the ocean was actually this mountain range here. There's a coastal mountain range that parallels the Andes Mountains going north to south along the spine of Chile. And that mountain range is older than the Andes mountain range. So as you can see, it's a lower elevation. This is composed of a lot of decomposed granite, schist, mica, quartz, and a lot of the southern regions of Chile where there's dry farming. This is the soil along the coastal mountain range that the oldest vines have really been able to survive in. So there's a lot of important points to understand about that from a soil perspective, but it's also important from a coastal perspective that wines and vines that are planted on the eastern or western side of the coastal hills are very different because of that orientation of slope. So a lot of different kind of nuances you can see with this map that, you know, wines from Chile are not just one definition. It's very nuanced in subregions, as well as in Mendoza, based on where you are in Luján de Cuyo, the Uco Valley, or up in the mountains. So that is our general 101 in a very nerdy level with the wine maps from Argentina and Chile. And hopefully that's helpful for you guys to have a review. And what we're going to hop into next is a review of really the core brands that we focus on at Vine Connections, including the wines and the brands that you'll be focusing on in different programs as you go into the second half of 2020. So I want to arm you with refresh sound bites and reviews of the brand stories and SKU stories here. And we're going to talk about wines from Chile and Argentina. So what we're going to start out with are the wines from Boya. So Boya is a line of wines from the coast of Chile, from the Leda Valley. And the name Boya is a Spanish word for buoy. Yes, many people want to say booyah, but it's pronounced Boya, and it's a Spanish word. And the reason why it's called Boya, being a buoy, is that this vineyard area is called the Leda Valley in Chile. It's as if we all flew into this capital city of Santiago, got in a van, and drove an hour and a half west to what I consider the Sonoma coast area of Chile. So we're talking coastal wines here. And the Leda Valley is really important within the coastal wine story of Chile because the original coastal region in Chile is an area called Casablanca. And that was pioneered really in the 80s as a coastal wine region, and no one thought you could plant even closer to the ocean. So the Garza Silva family, who's behind the wines of Boya, recognized the Leda Valley on the western side of the coastal mountain range in Chile. This area is facing the ocean. You really can't get vineyards closer to the Pacific waves. These vineyards sit 5 to 7 miles inland with an unobstructed influence of the ocean. And they saw the potential of this region to become a cool climate varietal producing region. Everyone thought they were crazy, that nothing could grow there. And they pioneered this area of Leyda in the late 90s, and it has now grown to be one of the most sought after premium cool climate regions for Chilean wine. So you are dealing with a pioneering winemaking family here. And we have the wines of Amaina from Garza Silva and also the wines from Boya. So Boya, for me, this trio of wines, we have the Pinot Noir, the Sauvignon Blanc, as well as the Rosé. These are my go-to by the glass, but also crushable, less than $20 retail wines with varietals that people are completely searching for and at these competitive price points. So you've got a really fresh coastal Pinot Noir. You've got a super bright, limey, acidic Sauvignon Blanc that people go crazy for both just sipping, but also anything with culinary application that needs a little citrus to it. Boy, Sauvignon Blanc completely shines. And then the Rosé is a Pinot Noir based with a little bit of Grenache blended in. I would say the Rosé has been so much fun to play with because it is such a great light natural acidity with beautiful raspberry, summer strawberry fruit flavors, elements of mandarin and tangerine to really cut through that red fruit. And then all of the wines from Leyda always have this salty finish that makes it absolutely delicious on your palate, but keeps you wanting to sip and also makes it really fun to pair with. So that's a review of Boya. And again, I think these are just sharks for both an on and off-prem placement for categories and varietals that people are really going for. They're made in a very kind of reductive winemaking style, stainless steel driven and or used oak for the Pinot. And so really aiming for purity of fruit and freshness, all in screw cap. Next, we're gonna hop over to our friends in Argentina, and this is the world of La Posta. So La Posta is a project by Laura Catena, and the name La Posta means the Tavern of the Grape Grower in Spanish. And essentially, you guys work with both Luca and La Posta. We're gonna talk about Luca as well. These are both projects from Laura Catena. And they are projects that after she started working with her dad and her family for the Catena winery, their family winery, she started seeing stories of Argentine wine that weren't being told in the export market that she really wanted to tell. And one of them is the grape grower generational story in Argentina. Obviously, there's lots of wineries in Argentina that have estate vineyards, but there's also families who originally came over from Italy in the 1800s to Argentina. They landed in Buenos Aires. The railroad was built between Buenos Aires and Mendoza. A lot of Italians went west to the mountains and brought their vines as well as their viticultural knowledge with them. So that's what really built the foundation of wine culture in Mendoza. And also, as you can tell with the different cultural elements in Argentina, a lot of it is based with an Italian twist to it. Their fiery nature, a lot of their cuisine has a lot of Italian influence, as well as just their wine culture. And so the families who originally planted these vineyards have passed them down generationally, and they grow some of the best fruit in Mendoza. So instead of putting her name on the bottle, she really wanted to put the grower family names in the bottle. So it's like a grower's champagne, but it's grower's Malbec. And so the names of the La Posta Malbecs are all named after the grower families, and they all sound very Italian because these are generational families. So you have La Posta Fazio, La Posta Paolucci, and La Posta Pizzella. The other element, so there's a lot of cultural element behind La Posta, but from a market standpoint, especially from an educational standpoint, all those three Malbecs are all 100% Malbecs, and they're all made in the same way. The only difference between all of them is where they're grown within Mendoza. So this is just a small general map that you can see here, that Fazio and Pizzella are from two different regions in the Uco Valley, and Paolucci is from Luján de Cuyo. So with them all having similarities except for where they're grown, if you do a tasting for yourself personally and or with a buyer of the three single vineyard La Posta Malbecs, there is no way that person can turn to you and say that all Malbecs taste the same. It is unbelievable how different they are from the fruit expression, the structure of tannin, the aromatics, the different fruit to spice level that they have. It is amazing when you really can organize a tasting like that with that focus, how much you realize you underestimated the grape of Malbec. And what's also really powerful about the La Posta lineup in that way is that when you set up a tasting like that, not only is it a learning experience for Malbec that elevates the grape for the buyer, but it also allows them to pick what their favorite style is. And they might love having all three, and they sit beautifully in the shelf with their new packaging and design, or they end up really gravitating towards one style, and that's kind of their workhorse Malbec. So have fun with La Posta. I just think I still don't know another brand in the market that delivers in the way that La Posta does for packaging, story, pedigree, as well as just quality. We were talking about this in another section with insights, but also fuel yourself when you go in the market talking about Malbec, that Malbec is still the #1 imported red varietal to the United States. It is still king with consumers. Argentina is the second highest growing category on wine.com during the time of COVID. So the consumer still loves Malbec and still loves Argentina. So there's no way that this kind of grape is over or this category is over. If anything, it's only getting better. And I think Argentina has kind of only had a step one with Malbec, and this generation is taking it to a next level. So that is La Posta for a 101. And now we'll go to Luca. So Luca, in comparison to La Posta, is really Laura's kind of more premium, higher level brand from Argentina. And Luca is named after her son, Luca. And Luca, for me, tells 3 really important stories in Argentina. One is the old vine story of Argentina. Many people think that because it's a new world, quote unquote, wine making region, that Argentina only started making wine in the 1980s. That is not true. This country, as well as Chile, has been making wine since the 1500s. So some of the older vineyards in Argentina weren't really being shown to tell that story. So that is one element. The second element is higher elevation wines and really telling the important story of what makes high elevation wines in Argentina. You're going to see that with the G-Lot wines for both the Pinot Noir and the Chardonnay. And that leads to the third element of Luca, which is varietals outside of just Malbec in Argentina. Yes, there's the old vine Malbec, there's Malbec within the certain blends of Luca, there's a Paraje Altamira Malbec, but there's also Syrah, as well as Pinot Noir and Chardonnay. And specifically, the Pinot Noir and Chardonnay are really important in the story of Mendoza because these are the first vines ever planted at 5,000 feet in the Uco Valley. That in the 90s really pioneered the entire movement of moving and focusing towards the Uco Valley and high elevation to see what the potential is for that in Mendoza. Additionally, only higher elevation are areas where you can really grow varietals like Pinot and Chard that need cooler temperatures. As we talked about before, the way you get cool temperatures in Mendoza is going up in elevation. So lots of different nuance with the wines in Luca and how you can storytell with them, but also how you can position them for different slots. And it's a premium brand from Argentina that's not only Malbec. So it's a very diverse in that way as well. The workhorse for Luca is the old vine Malbec. I think this wine has been tried and true in the market for many, many years. Luca is a brand that started with Vine Connections 20 years ago. And from the quality of the packaging, the presence of the bottle, the accolades that this wine has accumulated over the last 20 years, there's continued fans of Luca Malbec. It's made the top 100 Wine Spectator multiple times. And it's just a beautiful expression of what Malbec can do in the next level. So know when you're taking this out, this can fill the slot of kind of that next tier for Malbec with the pedigree and the face of Laura Catena behind it, and the known fact that it's just been such a successful wine in multiple markets and will be in yours as well. So that is Luca. In the same vein of Argentina, we're going to talk about Arena. So Arena is made by the winery Casa Reina. Casa Reina, it means the house of sand in Spanish. And arena is a play on the word for sand in Spanish. Arena, A-R-E-N-A, is the Spanish word for sand. We added a Y in there just to help English speakers say the name correctly. And as you can tell with the label, it also alludes to the passing of time with sand through wine, you know, the shape of the wine glass. So sharing these bottles, passing time with family and friends. And what I love about Arena is that even more so, it fits that category and price point of wine and style that all day, these are weeknight wines. These average $15 retail price. So it can completely rock and roll for a by the glass slot, but also really appeal to a retail price that people are reaching for. What I love about the Malbec and the Cabernet Sauvignon is that they're both unoaked, and the purity and the quality of fruit really shines through for varietals that usually have a supportive oak behind it and usually are very unbalanced for that price point. And people are always super surprised at the quality and the structure in the bottle, along with the purity of fruit for both of those wines. And the Torrontés is the white wine that is our only wine outside of Mendoza in our portfolio. This is from the Salta region, and that is because the best wines made from Torrontés, the grape, in Argentina are from Salta. So this is from the high elevation area of El Calafate, within the Salta region, and this is the region that goes from 6,000 feet all the way up to 10,000 feet in certain regions. So really extreme high elevation desert. And I've tasted a lot of Torrontés in my life. I know English speakers say Torrontés, but you can practice your Spanish accent. This, I think Torrontés, because it's one of its parents is Muscat de Alejandría. It's a cross between that and Criollo Chica, which is the mission grape. It's very aromatic. It's very floral. I think really poorly made Torrontés wines it's very too floral. Sometimes can lead to soapy flavors that are just really off-putting. I think Arena Torrontés is true to the varietal, has beautiful white flower aromatics, but is so well balanced on the palate with more stone fruit like peaches and apricots, and has an excellent citrus element of lemon to really refresh the palate, keep it balanced. And it's just a beautiful wine to sip. And again, consumers really gravitate toward this style of white wine still. And it's great that wine lovers, as well as kind of basic wine drinkers, can really enjoy that bottle. So that is Reina. We're gonna hop over to Chile once again, and we're gonna go to Casa Silva. And I'm gonna try my best to keep this a very abridged discussion on Carmenere, but we can do a whole seminar on just the Carmenere grape in Chile. It has such a history and such an interesting real-time story it's living of how it's evolving in Chile, because the grape of Carmenere has a nickname. It's called the Lost Grape of Bordeaux. It is a grape that came over in the 1800s with all the other Bordeaux varietals for the first time to South America. It was planted in Chile with all the other Bordeaux reds, but Chileans mistakenly labeled all of the Carmenere vines as Merlot. So with many, many years of harvesting quote unquote Merlot blocks and seeing that different rows turn different color leaves in the fall, they had different ripening periods. Instead of thinking they had a different grape, they started calling Carmenere Chilean Merlot or late harvest Merlot, which is really impressive on the Chilean side. But ironically, it took a Frenchman to be traveling in Chile who was an ampelographer, studying the identification of grapes and realizing this is not Merlot, but I don't know what it is. And having it genetically broken down, brought back to France, and alerted Chile through a fax that they had discovered together that not only was this not Merlot, that this is Carmenere, and not only is it just Carmenere, it's Carmenere from pre-phylloxera of France. So original rootstock Carmenere. The gap of time there, Carmenere first arrived in the 1800s. That discovery happened in 1994. which is crazy recent on the timeline of wine. So even though we all know Carmenere is such a flagship grape of Chile, it really has had a young story overall for its true identification in the country. So is essentially what happened after its discovery or rediscovery is that a lot of the first Carmeneres labeled as Carmenere coming out of Chile were terrible. They were still harvesting it way too early like Merlot, then trying to over oak the wine. So the first Carmeneres coming out of Chile tasted like chocolate covered green bell peppers, which no one wants to drink. So the grape kind of got a bad rap for what it could taste like, but what they were tasting was just really poorly made Carmenere. So Casa Silva is a 6th generation winery in the Colchagua Valley who took the leadership to say, you know what, we need to take ownership of Carmenere. We are lucky that it landed in a home where it can really thrive versus very much cooler Bordeaux where you can never get a ripe Carmenere harvest. So we need to learn where is the best terroir for Carmenere to therefore know what a well-made Carmenere tastes like. So what they did is they pioneered different area plantations within the Colchagua Valley to find the best suiting terroir for Carmenere. One of them is called Los Lingues, which is on the eastern side of the Colchagua Valley, going up into the Piedmont of the Andes. That was pioneered in the 1990s, and that has proven to be one of the Grand Cru premium sites for Carmenere for many different reasons, one including the cooler temperatures, the other including the soil profile of alluvial and colluvial soil, creates a lot of better drainage for Carmenere versus the more clay floors of the valley where Merlot likes more hydration. That has proven to be a Goldilocks combination for Carmenere, that you therefore get a really balanced wine in your glass. That for me, from more of a consumer standpoint, I love describing Carmenere as if Cabernet Sauvignon and Malbec had a baby. And it's because you get great dark fruit and spice, great dark fruit and soft tannins from the Malbec, and then you get more of a spiciness and structure from the Cabernet Sauvignon side. So that flavor profile baby is what you can get in Carmenere. So consumers love it because they love the softer fruitier tannin of Malbec, but they also love the spicier element of Cabernet Sauvignon, and you can find that in one bottle of Carmenere. So we have two different wines of Carmenere from Casa Silva. Two of the ones that you work with are the single vineyard Los Lingues, which is 100% from the Los Lingues vineyard I just described. And then you have the Cuvée Colchagua, which is on the screen here. So the Cuvée Colchagua, as it's a cuvée, is a blend of Los Lingues and another vineyard site called Lolol, which is in the coastal region of Colchagua. So two cool climate regions being blended together. And the Los Lingues sits at a $20 retail price, and the Cuvée sits at a $15 retail price. Guys, I can't emphasize enough that pound for pound, the Cuvée Colchagua Carmenere from Casa Silva is the best quality to price ratio Carmenere in the market. I will stand by that true and true because I've experienced how many times I've tasted these Carmeneres, especially the Cuvée, with buyers and consumers alike, and them being totally blown away by the quality that's in their glass and what they're paying for it. So go out with confidence with Carmenere from Casa Silva, especially with the Carm Cuvée. You can get great competitive pricing with this wine, again, both for on and off premise, and know you have the backstory of how much this wine changes minds for the grape of Carmenere. All you need is to open the cork and get it in people's mouths, and they will see the light. So that is Casa Silva. We have got great infographics and more information on Carmenere on our website that you can totally use for supportive POS. Going back to Argentina, we're going to keep it in the family and talk about Ernesto Catena. This is the brand called Tikal. This is Ernesto Catena's project, really focusing on two things. One, sustainable farming and the future of sustainable agriculture in Argentina. And the second is Malbec and Malbec blends. Yes, we all know Malbec in Argentina, but Tikal is such a fun set of wines to explore what Malbec does when it's blended with other single varietals. Tikal is named after Ernesto's son, Tikal, so you can get the very strong family ties that the Catena family has. It's also named after a Mayan ruin in Guatemala, and you can see that little picture of the red symbol on the label. And each of the wines from Tikal, again, are a base of Malbec blended with another varietal. So with Patriota, it's really named Patriota because it's a very patriotic Argentine blend. It's a blend of Malbec and the grape Bonarda. So Bonarda, I would say, is one of the most overlooked but important grapes in the story of Argentina. This is a grape that actually originates from France. Many people want to think it's the Italian Bonarda because of the Italian culture influence in Argentina. But the Argentine Bonarda actually comes from the Savoie region of France. It's also called Charbonneau. And Bonarda was planted in large quantities in more of the hotter regions of Mendoza in its origin, which still is used for very high production, high volume kind of Blanc wine. But when winemakers really started to understand Bonarda more, take more care of it in the vineyard, plant it in other regions, well-made Bonarda is outstanding. I love it because it's a little bit of a more red fruit than Malbec, and it's a little more savory than Malbec. So when you blend something like a base of Malbec, 60% Malbec, with more savory red fruited Bonarda with a little more acidity, it's an outstanding blend. Similar to Luca Malbec, I would say Tikal Patriota is one of the most recognized wines and brands that have been long and tried and true with Vine Connections for over 20 years. So taste this with folks. You've got a great story behind it. And again, I think it's a refreshing new experience for people of a Malbec-based wine from Argentina. And lastly, we're going to talk about J. Bouchon. We're finally ending our journey in the south of Chile. So we're in the Maule Valley here. J. Bouchon is a generational family winery. As you know with the name, its origins, they originated from France in Saint-Emilion, but came over to Chile in the 1800s, as many French families did, and started their wine story and heritage in Chile, in the south of Chile. So this generation, the fourth generation, has really changed the progression and the focus of the wines from J. Bouchon. This family represents what a lot of families have gone through in Chile, that originally when they started making wine in the modern chapter, 80s, 90s, early 2000s, they thought that they had to make wines that matched the rest of the world. If we're going to make good wine and be competitive in the market, we need to make really big Cabernet Sauvignons, which, as we know, has very much evolved since then. So the evolution and revolution they've gone through is really going back to their roots and making wines that are truly honest to where they're from, which is the Maule Valley. So you'll see with other Bouchon wines that you work with the really cool wines of Pais, with J. Bouchon, which is the mission grape, the original grape that was brought over by the Spaniards in the 1500s when they arrived to the Americas, which is that grape varietal is mostly planted in the south of Chile in Maule, and that's also where the oldest vine vineyards are in Chile and of the varietal in the world. So really fun, unique storytelling, very specific to the identity of Maule with those Bouchon wines. And then you have here is their block series Cabernet Sauvignon. So what they did with their cab, instead of trying to make wine that was big, bombastic, and for competitive market space, they said, we need to make a cab that's specific and unique to Maule. So the block series alludes to this study that the Bouchon family did within their Cabernet blocks in Maule. And there's a lot of granite in the coastal mountain range area of the Maule Valley, farther towards the west. So they mapped out a whole geothermic magnetic map of the clay content and the granite content within their blocks of Cabernet. They've microvinified these blocks after they realized where there's more clay and more granite. And they realized that the granite blocks had this tremendous natural structure that was lacking in more of the clay areas. So they took every vintage, they take the best blocks of those microvinifications and blend them together to make the block series. So I love tasting J. Bouchon Block Series Cab with folks. Again, this sits at the $20 price point. So outstanding over-delivering price for the category of Cabernet Sauvignon. And it's a cab that has extreme balance with also having intrigue and classic cab flavor profile notes. So I love tasting this with kind of cab drinkers that think they're not cab drinkers because they don't want this huge oak bomb or tannin bomb in their mouth. You can have elegance with cab, and that's why I love showing J. Bouchon Block Series cab. So that's how I position the J. Bouchon cab in the market. Again, for promos for $20 or under Cabernet Sauvignons that really over deliver, this is where J. Bouchon Block Series really shines. That is what I have for you today. Montana, are you still there and are you still alive?
I 100% am, and I am so grateful. So I'm gonna keep the whole presentation as one and post that, but I'm also gonna splice this up into different sections. And I love how we'll have like just a video specific to La Posta, specific to Luca. Yep. So that'll be such a great reference, so useful. So thank you for that so much. It is just, it's so great to get like that holistic view, and then there's so much great content there. So you guys are the best. Thank you.
Oh my gosh. Thank you, team. Thank you for having me. Thank you for taking the journey. You guys know to reach out for anything you need. Elizabeth@vineconnections.com. We are here for you, and let's crush the rest of the year. Let's just do it.
Absolutely.